Have you ever felt like no matter how much you give, it's still not enough? You show up, you care, you try to do everything right, and yet she treats you like an option, like someone she can count. The uncomfortable truth most men avoid. A woman will only respect you to the level that you respect yourself. Not what you say, not what you promise, but what you allow. Because every time you stay silent when something feels wrong, every time you accept behavior you know you shouldn't, you're not being nice, you're teaching her how to treat you. And most men never realize this. They think respect comes from being more giving, more patient, more understanding, but it doesn't. Respect is not earned through effort, it is projected through standards. And those standards are revealed through what you say, or more importantly, what you are willing to say when it actually matters. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The worth of a man is measured by what he is able to refuse." And that idea changes everything. Because the moment you learn to speak with clarity, to set boundaries, to express yourself without fear, people start to see you differently, especially women. Not as someone who is trying to be liked, but as someone who respects himself. In this video, you're going to learn 7 powerful phrases that don't just change how she sees you, they change who you are. Not manipulation, not tricks, but clear, direct expressions of self-respect, emotional control, and inner strength. And listen carefully, the last phrase is the one most men never say, because it requires something deeper than confidence. It requires control over yourself. The story, the man who lost respect. Before we go into the phrases, you need to understand something first. Because most men don't lose respect in one moment. They lose it slowly, through small decisions they think don't matter. I once knew a man like that. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel was what most people would describe as a good guy. He was polite, attentive, always willing to help. He showed up on time, he listened, he tried to do everything right. And yet, with women, nothing worked. Not because he lacked effort, but because he lacked boundaries. I remember one situation clearly. He went on a date with a woman he really liked. He arrived early, excited, even brought a small gift. She showed up 25 minutes late. No apology, just a casual smile and a joke about how she's always like that. Daniel laughed it off, said it was fine. But something shifted in that moment. Not in what she said, in what he allowed. Later that same night, in front of her friends, she made a sarcastic comment about his job. Everyone laughed. Daniel felt it, but instead of addressing it, he smiled and laughed along. Again, he stayed silent. A few days later, they had plans. At the last minute, she canceled. No real explanation. And Daniel replied the same way he always did. "No problem, whenever, I want." He thought he was being understanding. He thought he was being patient. But what he was actually doing was teaching her that his time, his boundaries, and his standards didn't matter. And over time, her behavior changed. She stopped respecting him. Not because she was cruel, but because he never showed her a reason to respect him. One day, he said something that stayed with me. "I feel invisible. I do everything right, but no one respects me." And that's when it became clear. The problem wasn't what he was doing, it was what he wasn't doing. He never said no. He never expressed disagreement. He never made it clear what he would and would not accept. So he made a decision. He stopped trying to be liked and started learning how to be respected. He began to speak differently, shorter, clearer, more direct. He started setting boundaries, not with anger, but with certainty. And slowly, everything changed. The same type of women who once ignored him started responding differently. Not because he became someone else, but because he finally showed who he was. And that's exactly what these phrases are about. They are not lines to memorize. They are expressions of self-respect, of clarity, of control. And once you understand them, you don't just change how women see you, you change how you see yourself. Let's begin with the first one.
Phrase number 1, I don't accept this.
Most men think respect is something you earn over time, but in reality, it often comes down to a single moment, a moment where something happens and you either speak or stay silent. Because every time you tolerate something you don't like, you send a message, not to her, to yourself, that your standards are optional. And once that message is clear, respect begins to disappear. This is where the first phrase comes in. I don't accept this. Simple, direct, no anger, no drama, no over-explaining, just clarity. Because the problem is not that women test boundaries. Everyone does. The problem is that most men don't have any. They laugh things off. They ignore disrespect. They tell themselves it's not a big deal, but it is. Because small things become patterns. Imagine she makes a sarcastic comment about you in front of others. The insecure man smiles awkwardly, tries to brush it off. But the man who respects himself pauses, looks at her, and says calmly, I don't accept that. That moment changes the entire dynamic. Not because of the words themselves, but because of what they represent. A line, a standard, a boundary that cannot be crossed. Marcus Aurelius once said, the worth of a man is measured by what he is able to refuse. And most men fail right here. Not because they don't feel the discomfort, but because they're afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of losing her, afraid of being disliked. So they stay silent, and in doing so, they slowly lose themselves. But here's the truth. If you can't say no, nothing else you say will matter. Because without boundaries, everything you give becomes expected, and eventually taken for granted. Respect begins the moment you show that not everything is acceptable, that your time, your energy, your dignity have value, and value is always protected, never negotiated. And that leads to the second phrase most men avoid because it requires something just as uncomfortable, having your own opinion.
Phrase number 2, I don't agree. One of the fastest ways to lose respect is to agree with everything. Not because you truly believe it, but because you want to avoid tension. You don't want conflict. You don't want to upset her. You don't want to risk being disliked. So you nod, you smile, and you silence your own thoughts. At first, it feels harmless, but over time, something changes. You stop being seen as a man with opinions and start being seen as someone who simply follows. And no one respects a man who follows everything. This is where the second phrase comes in. I don't agree. I see it differently. Calm, direct, without emotion. Because this is not about arguing. It's about showing that you have your own perspective. Epictetus once said, it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about those things. In other words, what you think matters. Your perspective matters. And when you hide it, you're telling the world that it doesn't. Imagine she says something like, all men are the same. Most men stay quiet. Some laugh it off. But the man who respects himself responds simply, I don't agree. I see it differently. And then he explains his view, not to dominate, not to prove her wrong, but to stand in his own thinking. That moment changes everything, because now you are not trying to be liked. You are being real. And that creates a deeper kind of respect. Not approval, but recognition. You are not there to mirror her. You are there as an equal, someone with his own mind. And the moment you stop hiding that, you stop being invisible. And that leads to the third phrase, the one that destroys emotional dependence completely.
Phrase number 3. I enjoy being with you, but I don't depend on this. This is where most men lose respect, without even realizing it, not through what they say, but through what they feel. Because the moment you start needing her attention, needing her replies, needing her presence, everything changes. You become anxious, you overthink, you wait, and slowly you stop acting from strength and start reacting from fear. Fear of losing her, fear of being ignored, fear of not being enough. And that fear is felt, not logically, but emotionally. This is why emotional dependence kills attraction so quickly, because it shifts the dynamic from choice to need. And nothing destroys respect faster than need. This is where the third phrase comes in. I enjoy being with you, but I don't depend on this. There's no tension in it, no pressure, no hidden demand, just clarity. Because you're not rejecting her, you're defining yourself. Seneca once said, "The wise man is self-sufficient, yet he still finds joy in the company of others." That is the balance. You can enjoy her presence, you can appreciate the connection, but your stability does not come from her. Imagine she starts pulling away, taking longer to reply, canceling plans, becoming inconsistent. Most men react immediately. They double text, they ask questions, they try to fix it. But the man who understands this principle stays grounded, and when needed, he makes it clear, I enjoy being with you, but I don't depend on this. That sentence changes how she sees you, because now you are not chasing the connection, you are choosing it. And choice is always more powerful than need. Think of it like this. A tree can give shade, it can give fruit, but its roots don't depend on anyone else. It stands on its own. That's what emotional independence looks like. You give, but you don't lose yourself. You connect, but you don't attach your identity to the outcome. And when a woman feels that, she doesn't feel pressure, she feels space. And in that space, attraction grows naturally. Because now, being with you is not an obligation, it's a choice. And that leads to the fourth phrase, the one that reveals who you are when emotions start to rise.
Phrase number 4. Let's talk when you're calmer, not now. Most men don't lose respect in calm moments. They lose it in emotional ones. When tension rises, when voices get louder, when things become unpredictable, that's where everything is revealed. Because in those moments, you don't act from logic, you react from emotion. And most men fail right there. They argue, they defend, they raise their voice, they try to win the moment. But in doing that, they lose control. And the moment you lose control, you lose respect. This is where the fourth phrase comes in. Let's talk when you're calmer, not now. There's no aggression in it, no avoidance either, just control. Because you're not running away from the conversation, you're setting the condition for it. You're saying, I don't engage in chaos, I communicate with clarity. Epictetus once said, no man is free who is not master of himself. And this is exactly what that looks like. Self-mastery in real time. Imagine she gets upset over something small. Her tone changes, her emotions rise. She tries to pull you into an argument. Most men take the bait. They react instantly. But the man who understands this pauses. He stays calm, and he says simply, let's talk when you're calmer, not now. That moment changes the entire dynamic because you are no longer reacting, you are leading the interaction. You're showing that your emotional state is not controlled by the situation, and that creates a different kind of presence,
Not loud, not dominant, but stable. And stability is what people trust. You're not rejecting her, you're rejecting the chaos. And that sends a clear message. If you want access to me, it comes with respect. Because communication is not just about talking, it's about timing, it's about tone, and most importantly, it's about control. When you control yourself, you control the situation. And when you can do that under pressure, you become someone very difficult to shake. And that leads to the fifth phrase, the one that defines your direction in life.
Phrase number 5. I want this and I'm going for it. Respect is not only built in how you react, it's built in where you're going. Because a man without direction is easy to ignore. He adapts to everything. He changes based on opinions. He hesitates when challenged. And over time, people stop taking him seriously. But a man with direction is different. He doesn't need to convince anyone. He doesn't need approval because he already knows where he's going. This is where the fifth phrase comes in. I want this and I'm going for it. There is no arrogance in it, no need to prove anything, just certainty. Because clarity creates presence, and presence creates respect. Seneca once said, if a man does not know to which port he is sailing, no wind is favorable. In other words, if you don't have a direction, everything can distract you. Every opinion can shake you. Every doubt can stop you. Imagine you're working towards something important, a goal, a project, a path that matters to you. And she says, that's risky. That might not work. Maybe you should reconsider. Most men hesitate in that moment. They start doubting themselves. They adjust their direction just to keep the peace. But the man who respects himself stays grounded. He listens, but he doesn't drift. And he responds simply, I want this and I'm going for it. That sentence does something powerful. It shows that your life has a center, a direction that doesn't change based on external pressure. You're not asking for permission, you're making a decision. And that's what separates a man with purpose from a man who is just reacting to life. Think of it like a ship. If you don't know your destination, any wave can push you off course. But if your direction is clear, even storms become part of the journey because they don't stop you, they shape you. And when a woman sees that, she doesn't just see confidence, she sees stability. A man who stands for something, a man who moves forward whether she agrees or not. And that leads to the sixth phrase, the one that proves you don't need validation to keep going.
Phrase number 6. I don't need you to agree to move forward. Most men don't just want to be understood. They want approval. And that's where everything starts to go wrong. Because the moment your decisions depend on someone else agreeing with you, you stop leading your own life. You start adjusting, explaining, waiting for validation, and slowly you lose direction. This is where the sixth phrase comes in. I don't need you to agree to move forward. There is no arrogance in it, no rejection, just certainty. Because you can respect someone's opinion and still choose your own path. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." In other words, freedom doesn't come from people agreeing with you. It comes from having the courage to move forward anyway. Imagine she questions your choices, your lifestyle, your priorities, your direction. Most men react by trying to convince her. They explain more, they justify themselves, they try to earn approval. But the man who respects himself does something different. He listens, he considers, and then if needed, he says, I don't need you to agree to move forward. That moment changes everything, because now you are not asking for permission, you're making a decision. And that creates a different kind of presence. You are no longer shaped by opinions, you are guided by your own clarity. Think of it like a path. Some people will understand it, some people won't. But the path doesn't disappear just because others don't see it, and neither should yours. You can invite someone to walk with you, but you don't stop walking just because they hesitate. And when a woman sees that, she doesn't feel like she controls your direction. She feels like she's choosing to be part of a life that is already moving forward. And that is where real respect begins. And that leads to the final phrase, the one that protects everything you've built.
Phrase number 7, my peace is not negotiable. There is one thing most men give away too easily, and once it's gone, everything else starts to collapse. Their peace, not their time, not their attention, their inner stability. Because the moment you allow yourself to be pulled into constant arguments, emotional games, unnecessary drama, you lose control. And when you lose control, you lose respect. Not just from her, from yourself. This is where the final phrase comes in. My peace is not negotiable. Simple, but extremely difficult to live by. Because it requires discipline. It requires restraint. It requires the ability to walk away from things that disturb your balance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That is the foundation of this phrase. You cannot control what others say. You cannot control how they behave, but you can always control what you allow into your inner world. Imagine she tries to provoke you, push your buttons, create tension over something small. Most men react instantly. They defend themselves, they argue back, they get pulled into the emotion. But the man who understands this principle does something different. He stays calm. He doesn't match the energy, and when needed, he makes it clear, my peace is not negotiable. That moment draws a line, not against her, but around yourself. You're not trying to win the argument, you're choosing not to enter it. Because not every situation deserves your energy. Not every emotion deserves your reaction. Think of your mind like clear water. Every time you engage in unnecessary conflict, someone drops ink into it. And if you never protect it, it slowly becomes dark. But the moment you decide that your peace is non-negotiable, you stop allowing that contamination. You become selective with your time, with your energy, with your attention. And that changes everything. Because now you are no longer reacting to the world. You are choosing how you experience it. And that is real control. That is real strength. That is what people feel when they are around you. A man who cannot be easily shaken. A man who does not lose himself in chaos. A man who protects what matters. And that is why this is the most powerful phrase of all. Because it doesn't just define your boundaries, it defines your identity. And once you live by it, respect is no longer something you ask for. It becomes something people naturally give. Conclusion. Respect is not asked, it is projected. Respect is not something you earn by pleasing people. It's not something you gain by giving more or trying harder. Respect comes from clarity, from boundaries, from knowing exactly what you allow and what you refuse. Today, you've seen 7 phrases, but they are not just words. They're decisions. They are standards. They are a reflection of who you are. I don't accept this. I don't agree.
I enjoy being with you, but I don't depend on this. Let's talk when you're calmer, not now. I want this, and I'm going for it. I don't need you to agree to move forward. My peace is not negotiable. If you live by these, you don't need to chase respect. You don't need to ask for it. You don't need to prove anything, because people can feel it in the way you speak, in the way you respond, in the way you carry yourself. And here is the truth most men avoid. No one will respect you more than you respect yourself. So stop staying silent. Stop accepting what you know is wrong. Stop lowering your standards just to keep someone in your life. Because the moment you start speaking with clarity, the moment you start setting boundaries, the moment you show that your life does not depend on anyone, you become someone very difficult to ignore, very difficult to replace, and impossible to disrespect. If you've made it this far, type in the comments, "I respect myself," because that's where everything begins. Thank you for watching Stoic Wisdom today. Until next time, stay calm, stay grounded, stay stoic.